competition. So there was a trials called the Colmore Cup, and they entered the bike, and it did very well. And on the back of that, that early success in that competition, they then decided they would enter it into the prestigious international 6-day trial. So they entered it into the 1948 ISDT, which was held in Italy that year, and as a result, they stunned everyone by coming home with 2 gold medals. The decision on the back of that was to go into production with this motorcycle. So by 1949, the model was shown at Earl's Court in 1948, and by 1949, the model was available to the public. So 70 years ago this year, this model became available to the public. And it featured a whole host of innovations. So I've already mentioned the articulating swinging arm, which was a first for a production motorcycle. So this was the first mass production motorcycle anywhere in the world to have a swinging arm on it. It had a cush drive, again a first for Royal Enfield. Both of these features now exist on almost every motorcycle you will see. So they changed the face of motorcycling and consigned the rigid frame to the dustbin of history, really. It also came with Royal Enfield's first 5-speed gearbox, and they claim very proudly a scientifically designed air filter. I'm not quite sure what was scientific about it, but on the back of that, Royal Enfield also offered a number of specials. So in their annual catalogue, they offered a number of specials. And one of those was the Trials Works replica. So the Works team, as they were called, the factory team, the official riders, had machines developed for competition by the factory. But with the Trials Works replica, the clubman could buy a motorcycle for competition at the weekends. So for I think a sale price of £171, the clubman could go and buy a bike that was prepped for trials riding and compete at the weekends. So what is trials riding? So trials or observed section trials or observed trials competition have been around since the early 1900s. And essentially what a trial is it's a competition held over natural terrain, natural obstacles, things like rocks and tree stumps and muddy banks. And the idea is the rider is a test of their skill, their machine control, their balance, and their motorcycle handling. And it was a precursor to scrambles and to motocross, but it's still an event in its own right today. Typically, there's an observer. He watches the rider ride through the section, and you're going to be doing some of this tomorrow. And as I say, the idea is to try and maintain composure and control and not put your feet down, effectively. This started in Europe. It was a very popular sport in the UK. It was often used as a winter training sport. So when road racers and other racers were in the off-season, when it was wet and cold, this was a form of motorsport that you could still do. And that it's still used as that by some riders today. Modern trials machines have evolved considerably from where they were. So if you look at a modern trials bike, this image up here, you can see that the bikes have evolved. They've got, typically today, they don't have a lot of fuel tank volume, if any. They have comparatively short travel suspension, lots of ground clearance, but short travel suspension, very high gearing. They're extremely light. And they're evolved specifically for one job, which is to compete in trials competitions. And modern day trials competitions, I'm sure you've seen on the TV or on YouTube or maybe even in person. They tend now to be on man-made courses, jumping over barrels and skips and cars, or even the outdoor trials where you do still see them using natural obstacles. They still tend to be slightly defined courses, if you like. Whereas back in the 1940s and 50s, trials was very much, it was about endurance as well as durability as well as skill. So the sections between the observed sections, the transit stages, were just as important. In some ways, a little like a modern rally raid, with the observed special sections in between. And And the bikes in the 30s and the 40s and even up to the 60s were very much mildly modified road bikes. So the bikes that you see before you today are really representative of the kind of bikes that the riders back in the 40s and 50s would have been riding in competition. So I'm going to ask Steve Kenny on stage now. Now, Steve is a friend of Royal Enfield's. He's been here all week helping us out. I'm going to take out a piece of paper because there's no way I'm going to manage to remember all the things he's done. So Steve's an ex-paratrooper, but he's been riding trials since he was 10. So apparently that's 45 years, which tells you how old Steve is now. He's a semi-pro trials rider, so he's ridden for the CCM factory, who were Armstrong before that. And he's ridden in the Scottish six-day trials, which is one of the most famous and hardest trials events. He's done that 15 times. He's ridden in the Isle of Man, the Manx two-day event, something like 12 times, the French 4 days, 27 times, the Bembros, the Colmont Cup. So he really is a very accomplished rider. So if I can welcome Steve onto stage. And I'm just going to ask Steve to talk us through a little bit about the rules of trials. So, I've given a brief example or explanation of what the general idea is, but just tell us about the rules, Steve. So,
basically, the rules go as follows: where you've got to get through the sections, almost like a game of golf, where you've got to drop the least amount of marks. The way you do that is by putting your foot down. If you put your foot down once, you lose 1 point. If you put your foot down twice, you lose 2 points. If you put your foot down 3 times, 3 points. After that, you can put your foot down as many times as you want, you still get 3. If you fall off, stall, you get 5. Now in the trials world, getting a 5 is bad. My 5 times table is pretty good.
And what do you call it when you put your foot down, Steve? What's the...
In the trials world, it's commonly known as a dab. Very, very common. I've had a dab, which is good sometimes, because you need to put your foot down to keep yourself steady.
So you rode in the Scottish six-day, Stephen, and you can see on the screen behind us, this is just some footage of that. Just tell me a bit about your experience of riding in that competition.
The only way I can sum it up in one word is hell. The only problem is, it's horrendous when you're doing it, but once when you've done it, you need to go back and do it again. This is often about 2 months after the event, where you're thinking, shall I do it again or not? And that's one of the big problems I had when I was riding. The first time I rode it, I was 17 years old. Not really a lot of experience of moors, travelling along the distances that are required. I know certainly in some of the areas that you guys might have ridden, some distances that you covered, but when I say 40 miles, might sound nothing, but when you've got 40 miles of bogs, which is muddy ravines where you get stuck into, you have to drag your bike out, you struggle, you lose a lot of energy, and this goes on for 7.5 hours throughout the day. It might sound nothing, but with Scotland, one of the big problems you got is that it's the weather. You can have 4 seasons in one day. So,
and I think it's fair to say that the format of the trial hasn't really changed since the 50s. It's still very much the same as it was then. And I mean, these are incredibly tough riders. You know, I think I've heard stories of people losing fingers and...
In fairness, Mark, it is tough, and people do get injuries. Unfortunately, one year we did a fatality, which was very unforeseen, very sad. But like a lot of competitors, you still need to compete. And it's just one of them events that draws people back again and again wanting to do it.
And it's a real test of the machine's durability, isn't it? The man and the machine together, really.
Indeed, Mark. I mean, originally when the event was set up, it was a reliability event for the bikes, and then it became reliability for the man as well. So it's man and machine against the elements. And again, you can see the countryside just there, how beautiful it is. That's on a nice day. When you get a bad day, and you've got hail coming down, you've got snow coming down, it can be very, very bad.
And I think it's fair to say that that it really does sort the men from the boys.
I was a boy who rode it, and then I was a man.
Thanks very much, Steve. Thank you. Steve Kenny, everyone. So, you know, Royal Enfield, as I said, were really, really successful with their trials bikes, all the way from the late 1940s, all the way through really to the mid 1960s. Both with the Bullet, so the Bullet 350, but also with, you can see here, so this is a later model Bullet, but we've also got the Clipper 250s, the Bullet 500, and the 500 Twins. And you know, these bikes became, Royal Enfield became known as a trials company. It was really at the heart of who we are and how the brand came about. Perfect. So this little table was something that was put out as part of a marketing brochure back in 1953 after the British team won the international six-day trial in Czechoslovakia. And you can see here the number of gold medals the team were awarded, silver medals, and then also there's the Vars team members, and team members from the Swedish team rode Royal Enfields and the Irish team. So, you know, it was really was a complete whitewash of the competition, and Royal Enfield really dominate the sport. Not only was it just about the motorcycles, but it was about the team. So Royal Enfield had a number of famous riders, people like Vic Britton, Jack Stoker, Charlie Rogers, Tim Elvis, all were really known household names in the day. But one name stood out amongst all the others, and that was Johnny Britton. And Johnny Britton was essentially the Dougie Lemkin of his day, or maybe even the Valentino Rossi. He started at the age of 17, following his father into the Royal Enfield team. So Vic Britton was his father. And we've got a short film now that we'll play just about Johnny.
Johnny Britton's motorcycling career began in 1948 at the tender age of 17. Over the next 16 years, he was to prove himself as one of Britain's most successful trials riders. Johnny won more than 50 trade-supported championship trials and an even larger number of non-championship events. His major achievements included winning the formidable Scottish six-day trial twice and the very tough Scott and British experts trials twice. In 1956, he won the highly prestigious ACU Star and achieved runner-up or third place on several other occasions. Johnny's performance in international six-day trials, known as the Olympics of motorcycling, is legendary. He competed for 15 consecutive years, winning an astonishing 13 gold medals.
And Johnny had a very special partnership with his motorcycle. So right from the start of his competition, he was awarded the number plate HMP 331, and this stuck with him throughout his riding career. And he said, when he was asked about it, that he rode that bike so much, and the bike evolved over time, but he rode that bike so much that he said it felt a part of his body. And I think it was a very special relationship he had, both with the motorcycle and with the factory. Very sadly, Johnny passed away at the beginning of the month. I met Johnny a couple of times personally. I met him at the 2013 launch of the GT, the 535. And Johnny was the absolute consummate gentleman. He was mild-mannered. You would never have any idea that he was such a dominant figure in his sport. He was a man of incredible deeds, and yet when you talk to him, he was a man of absolute. He was just humble and just such a gent to talk to. Many of the team at Royal Enfield knew Johnny, and you know, for us it's a very sad loss, and we'll miss him very much. So the Royal Enfield Bullet, it became a special motorcycle, and because of that, it caught the eye of the Indian Army. So post-war, post-independence, the newly independent Indian Army was looking for a motorcycle that was versatile, that was durable, that would go anywhere, to use to patrol India's new borders. And the Bullet was the obvious choice. There was a joint venture set up with Madras Motors, and initially 800 motorcycles were imported. and then the factory was set up and motorcycles began being manufactured. And to talk a little bit about the success of the Bullet in India, really, and how the story then became a legend is Shaji again. Shaji.
Thank you, Mark. Was 19 when we were looking for bikes, Indian Army was looking for bikes. They tried many bikes and finally the Royal Enfield was selected as the bike, and today we are still the top selling bike to Indian Army till today. So that is the record we are keeping it, and we are bound to keep that in the times to come also. And we are evolving this bike to ensure that it is staying relevant every time for that one. And across the country, we are extremely doing well from Kanyakumari to Kashmir. This bike is used for all the applications, and we are lucky to have this bike getting evolved for all the new emission norms and everything. So that is about Royal Enfield, about the Bullet. Today we got a film today based on the Bullet trials. I'll request to play the film.
And here comes the 5 times world champion Johnny Britton on the way to make it 6. 26 gold medals, 7 silvers, all time base team members. The Royal Enfield factory team has the ball in the corner.
Yes, Mark, can you tell us about both 350, both the bikes?
I can, Shaji. That thump. So we have two models here for you. We've got the 500cc and the 350. Very much inspired by those original 1948, 49, early 50s models. Obviously, the shape of the frame harks back to that and dates back to that. And we've used on the 500, we've used Johnny's factory colours with the chrome tank and pinstriping. They've got the very authentic looking Royal Enfield tank badge there. We've got fork gaiters on the front there. We've got a braced fork brace on the front with uprated mudguards front and rear. We've pulled the rear mudguard up and put a little luggage rack on the back there. Changed the tail light. We've put an upswept exhaust, very reminiscent of those original bikes. On the 350, it gets almost exactly the same treatment, except on the 350, we've got the frame, a little bit like those later Clippers that I showed you images of. I think they're cracking looking motorcycles. I think they've both come out really well. There's a range of accessories on both bikes there. So we've got the headlight grille as an accessory. We've got the handlebar brace pad. We've got the sump guard there. We've got the compact engine guards and the number board on these bikes. And again, I think that accessories pack really finished the bikes off. Obviously, complementing the accessories, we've got Royal Enfield's full catalogue of clothing and apparel, and things like the open face with the goggles really set the look off. And there's a whole bunch of our other apparel that really goes well with these bikes. And I think, you know, obviously there's quite a culture at the moment for scrambles and trials type motorcycles being customized. And I think what we've done here is given the customer a shortcut to that almost, you know, to give them that retro look and feel for a bike that they can use every day to and from work, but also can use it for, you know, a little bit more fun, which you're going to do tomorrow. Of course, the other thing I missed out is that we've got the more aggressive block pattern, so there's a sort of semi-off-road tyre on here, which is good for both road and off-road conditions. So to talk a little bit about tomorrow and what you'll be doing.
No, we need to ask Mark.
Sorry.
Which bike you will buy?
That bit, the bit about the price.
Yes,
you want to do that? Okay.
Which bike you will buy, Mark?
Well, I'll have the 500, please, Shaji. I think that
We will not give you. You are taking all the twins to UK without giving her. So this bike is first we are going to launch in India before we give to UK. So we will not give to Mark. So the bike price for the 500cc will be 2 lakhs. It is one country, one price. We'll have 2,07,104. That is the ex-showroom price across India. One country, one price. For the 350cc, the price is 1,62,345. That's the ex-showroom price. So we'll have one country, one price. We have kept it very accessible so that any customer who want to buy it, he can buy it. He don't have to customize. So we are giving everything in one package. That is what we are trying to do it. He can have all the products. He can have all the accessories from our showroom. This bike is available for sales from today. They can take.
So is this in the dealerships now?
Dealers and they can start delivery from tomorrow. We'll be delivering 170 dealers as of now, and we'll be delivering the bikes from tomorrow.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Great. So thank you so much. Thanks, Shaji.
Thanks, everyone.
Mark,
Wait, Mark.
do we have any questions for these gents here? Well, Mark, I had one actually.
Okay.
I'm saying for such a long time, most of our riders have been taking our motorcycles and doing their custom bit by themselves. How inspired were you by some of that work?
Very much. So, I mean, you know, there's certainly a look of some of the bikes you see at Ridermania. You know, when you see the dirt track races at Ridermania, the scrambles at Ridermania, there's definitely an element of that in these bikes. And, you know, we see all over the world people taking our motorcycles. There's been a lovely one from Italy very recently that I saw where they take and create this trials look and hark back to that original look and feel. So absolutely that influenced our direction very much. And we've tried to make them look as authentic as possible, but still make them usable. They're still a daily usable motorcycle. So they've got that kind of retro cool, you know, pull up outside a coffee shop and have a, but they're still usable. And of course, you chaps all know, you take these bikes regularly, you know, up to the Himalayas, and you do all sorts of riding on our bikes. So you know that actually they're capable of doing that. That's the reason they ended up doing so well back in the day, and why the Indian Army bought them. And so actually it's just a natural progression for us, really.
Right. Great. So any more questions from any of you, or would you just like to speak to these gents later in the evening? Great. So maybe we can have a couple of pictures, Mark and Shaji, please, before we take you on to the next section of the evening.